Week 35. Ego, friend or foe? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Jesus Christ begins his Beatitudes with the words, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." To be poor in spirit in such a way as to merit the kingdom of heaven doesn't mean to be poor-spirited. Rather, it means to see oneself as owning nothing, since all belongs to God. For all is a manifestation of his consciousness. Saint John of the Cross wrote, "If you would own everything, seek to own nothing." That which the ego relinquishes, offering it up to soul consciousness, is reclaimed forever in cosmic consciousness. Nothing is ever lost. Paramhansa Yogananda tells the story in Autobiography of a Yogi of the levitating saint Baduri Mahashaya. "Master," said a disciple of this saint once ardently, "you are wonderful. You have renounced riches and comforts to seek God and teach us wisdom." It was well known that Baduri Mahashaya had forsaken great family wealth in his early childhood when single-mindedly he entered the yogic path. "You are reversing the case." The saint's face had mild rebuke. "I have left a few paltry rupees, a few petty pleasures, for a cosmic empire of endless bliss. How then have I denied myself anything? I know the joy of sharing the treasure. Is that a sacrifice? The short-sighted worldly folk are verily the real renunciates. They relinquish an unparalleled divine possession for a poor handful of earthly toys." The Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter states, "All things are everywhere by nature wrought in interaction of their qualities. The fool cheated by self thinks, 'This I did, and that I wrought, but ah, thou strong-armed prince!' A better lessoned mind, knowing the play of visible things within the world of sense, and how the qualities must qualify, standeth aloof even from his acts." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
I'd like to read from Whispers from Eternity. This is a book of prayer poems from Paramahansa Yogananda. And this is entitled, "Baptize Me in the Flood of Thy Grace." I was baptized at the font of this material world. Parental heritage gave me my body. The milk from my mother's breast baptized me to the fill of flesh. Cloud-born rains, mountain springs, and meadow-nurtured food made me dependent on earth's sustenance. My imprisoned soul cried at last for freedom from the prison of confining flesh and solicitous maternal care. No more did I want to dwell within the fenced garden of the senses. Yes, I cried for freedom. Then at last, the cloud of silence within me, holding thee remote, burst, and thy mercy rained upon me, cleansing me with thy grace. The rising waters of thy spirit broke the narrow boundaries of my soul, baptizing me in thy expanding waters of infinity. The power of thy flood of cosmic consciousness broke the embankments of my senses, and every little bubble of my consciousness dissolved to be baptized in the waters of thy omnipresence. I love this particular reading from Whispers from Eternity, and it really is apropos in relationship to the topic today, ego, friend or foe. So many times we talk about, oh, this guy's full of himself, or look at that guy, he's got swaggered. You know, football players, and I was a football player, are the most typical ones who are have that sense of swaggered. In fact, when you're watching a football game, you see them strutting on the sidelines, and everybody's all hyped up, ready to go to battle and so forth. And they're particularly focused here at the medulla oblongata. Now, the medulla oblongata in the yoga tradition that Paramahansa Yogananda teaches, that we follow here, says that this is the center of our ego, right here for everyone. And so when we see ourselves watching a football game or find ourselves feeling that swaggered, bouncing down the street, you got that swaggered. You're swaying from side to side. You got this. Understand that you are being locked up in your ego awareness. And that ego, what is it? The ego, Yogananda simply defined the ego as the soul, spiritual beings that have chosen to come down into this world to play out a drama, to realize our highest potential. And the ego is that aspect which is identified with the physical body. And so this prayer poem that Yogananda wrote, I was baptized into this form. That's what it's about. Viewership, entertainment, quality, entertainment ratings, which draws in the sponsors. And the sponsors pay millions of dollars to sponsor a show, a TV show. And here we are on this TV show, and you're beginning, I've never even seen it before. And here I am on this show, and I'm watching what goes on. Everything is scripted except there is some improvisational actors that are involved. The principal actors are doing improv. And they make it a little funny and a little crass. There is some cursing going on, and these improvisational actors who are the principal of this show aren't all of very high vibration. Let's put it that way. But they're very entertaining. I was on this show, and there were these Japanese beetles flying around. Everyone was putting on suntan lotion, and these Japanese beetles were like coming in like honey, like bees to honey. They just smelt this suntan lotion. And all the principal actors were freaking out. All the background people were freaking out. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm going to have fun with this. So I grabbed one of these big Japanese beetles. These Japanese beetles, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're huge, and they're green, and they buzz. And you hear them when they come in. I mean, we have them out here in our backyard when we have potluck. A lot of times they'll come in, and people start freaking out and thinking they're bumblebees. So I grabbed this Japanese beetle out of the sky. I was one of those guys, those kids, when I grew up, I liked to catch bees and, flies, and, I did weird things in my script writing. But I thought, well, let me change the script on this show. So I grabbed the Japanese beetle out of the sky, and I put it on the shoulder of the host of the show. And he started freaking out. So the director, who's seeing all this, he he sends his AD over and he says, "Hey, listen, you're cool it down a little bit. You know, you're changing the script." They didn't like that, but everything is scripted, and you know, we watch TV and we think it's, you know, even so real. I remember when I was growing up, one of the favorite TV shows that my aunt and I would watch in our family was professional wrestling. And there was these principal wrestlers who were you know, they were very good. In those days, it was Mr. Freddie Blassie and Bobo Brazil. And they would have this routine down so pat. Bobo Brazil would get up and he would say, "Mr. Lane, I want to tell you and all my fans out there that I'm going to get that Mr. Freddie Blassie with my cocoa butt. This Friday night, I want all my fans out there to come on down and see me get Mr. Blassie with my cocoa butt." And Freddie Blassie, who's overhearing this, comes running in on stage. "You pencil neck geek, I'm going to get you with my figure 4 leg lock." And he starts hitting on Bobo Brazil. Bobo Brazil takes Freddie Blassie's head and smashes it up against his own head and gets him with the cocoa butt. This is all orchestrated. It seems so real. And my aunt, who was like, you know, in her 70s and 80s, and she was such a fan, and she would say, "It is real. It is real. This is terrible. I've got to go help Bobo Brazil. I'm going down there on Friday night." And so the entertainment of this world, this industry becomes so real. And in our own lives, we go through things that seem to be so real. And one of the techniques that Yogananda said when we're going through the ups and downs, the vicissitudes of life, when we're going through so many changes, is to have an other-minded state of being. Don't take things so seriously. Try to pull yourself out of the situation and as if you are observing yourself from a distance, that you are observing yourself going through fear or anger or crying, going through disappointment, going through different emotional states. But then notice how all that changes and dissipates. You know, life is like waves on an ocean. We have the ups and downs. I was recently doing a sort of a film shoot at an amusement park down in San Diego and down in Del Mar. And this was a film shoot, and we were on this ride that was literally nauseating. It was like the teacups at Disneyland. You were spinning this thing, and afterwards, I felt like throwing up. It was so exhilarating. But then after about an hour, I mean, it took a long time for me to come out of this sort of nauseated state, everything came back to normal. And life is like that. You know, we go through these ups and downs, and eventually we come out the other end. If we can understand that this life is like a movie, and you are playing a key role, and everyone has a key role in this movie. And if we can learn to meditate, and meditation is very important because it helps you to develop that other-minded attitude, the attitude of becoming the observer. And it also elicits the help and guidance from the director. Now, this guidance from the divine director is called intuition. And this intuition comes as we call on it, as we draw on it. It's the inspiration to remake ourselves. You know, so many times we define ourselves in a certain way. We put ourselves in a box. And as we put ourselves into the box, this is what I do, this is how I do things, this is how my partner or my friends define me. But it doesn't have to be that way. We have the ability to change. And we're tested every day in our ability to evolve ourselves and to remake ourselves. When I was at the Ananda Village last week for Spiritual Renewal Week, my wife and I, we were able to go up for the weekend. And so many people were coming up to me we hadn't seen for a long time and said, what are you doing, Ram? I said, well, I'm an actor. I'm in Hollywood, and that's what I do. Every day I'm looking for jobs, acting jobs to support myself. And they said, that is so incredible. What got you into doing that? I said, well, I needed to remake myself. I had to pay bills. And this is what God has given me at this time. And so, if we can just break the chains of mental ossification, if we can break the hypnosis of the definitions that we've come up with, that I'm this, I am that, we can remake ourselves into something that is far beyond who we might think we are right now. But it comes first through the asking in meditation. Through prayer is the asking, and the listening is the response, listening to that divine response that's coming from Spirit. I'd like to go further into this discussion by reading from this is a book called Rajarsi Janakananda, the Great Western Yogi. This is Yogananda's foremost disciple, Rajarsi Janakananda. He was a businessman. Again, he went through a dramatic change in his life. He was a businessman. He was the CEO of an insurance company in Kansas City called Epperson Insurance. It was a sort of a liability insurance company, insuring real estate. And he met Yogananda at a point in his life when it was during the early days of the Depression. And there was a lot of pressure on him in 1932, and the early 30s. And he came to a lecture of Yogananda, and he was a nervous person. I believe he was a chain smoker at that time. He came to this lecture of Yogananda and was touched on a very deep level and went through a radical change as a businessman. And Yogananda, after that lecture, taught him how to meditate and showed him the inner light. And from that point on, his whole way of doing business changed. Rajarsi said he would wake up. His wife was totally against him meditating. So he would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go to work. And at work, he would meditate from like 5 to 10 every day. Like a 4-hour meditation. I mean, he could afford it. He was the CEO. He went into his office. He told his secretary, don't disturb me. During this time period, understand that I'm in conference. I'm in conference. So this was his, regime every day, his meditative regime. And when he would come out of that meditation and start his daily activities with his employees and his different people, managers that are working for him, he would be so clear in his perception and in intuition. Now, what intuition is, it goes beyond the 5 senses. It goes beyond what we see outwardly. It goes beyond the problem solving, the inductive reasoning of problem solving, because it brings in the factor of the the all-seeing eye, the eye of spirit, which is trying to guide us to a higher level of inspiration and knowledge. So intuition is pure knowing, but not in an egoic sense. Not, I'm perfect in my intuition. None of that. It's from a calm state of being. And these are letters that Yogananda and Rajarsi were corresponding with each other. And there was one little section here that I wanted to read about Yogananda sharing some thoughts around this subject of ego, friend or foe. The more I see the miseries of the world and rebel against nature's cruelty, the more God shows me this world is a dream. Then and then only I find justification for all the tragedies of this earth, which otherwise are absolutely inexplicable. People are crying, laughing, wanting in the sleep of delusion. Only wakefulness in God is the remedy for all invasions of duality. Keep the mind always in one bliss. Then all the dualities will vanish. Among all trials, moods, mental changes, worldly duties, keep the underlying mind floating in absolute bliss and Om. Then you will understand this world is to be a dream. Be of even mind in everything. Then you will know that this world to be a dream. Love all with the love of God. Then you will know this life to be a dream. See one life in solid, liquid, gases, energy. Then you will know this universe is made of a dream. Dreams are motion pictures of life force and mind. Mind makes the films, and life materializes the pictures through the divine operator. Live in this world as if you were dreaming. Think yourself awake only when you are meditating and enjoying the bliss. This is a very important message in regards to our topic today, ego, friend or foe, because the choice that you make as a personality, as an ego, right here and now, to take the time to be still and meditate on a daily basis, that is what will drive you bit by bit to a point of understanding that this life is a dream. And it's a projection of the divine that's there for us to awaken to the reality of this moment. And what Yogananda is saying here, get in touch with the bliss. This is the center of bliss right here. When he teaches us to meditate at the point between the eyebrows, this is the Ananda center. This is the center of bliss. We come to the Ananda Center here in LA, but this is just an outward sort of symbol of the inner Ananda. This is the point by which we transmute the ego centered in the medulla oblongata, and we bring it up, that ego awareness, to the point between the eyebrows, to the bliss center. When you meditate deeply and begin to feel a sort of a magnetic pull, you'll begin to feel a vibration or magnetism generated at your third eye. When you begin to feel that magnetic pull, sometimes people say, it's almost like a headache coming on. I don't know what's going on. I'm feeling this energy at my third eye. This is a good thing, because this is the beginning stages of the manifestation of the bliss. Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda's guru, said, one of the techniques more important than meditation itself is meditating or keeping your awareness centered at the point between the eyebrows while you're doing your daily activities. Now, you might find that a little strange. You don't want to be going around, talking to people, looking up, okay, yeah. When we were singing that song, we were looking at Yogananda's picture. Dick Sheeny and I were singing the song. We were looking up because we were looking at Yogananda and singing that song. We didn't want to close our eyes since we were trying to entertain you. Our songs are really not entertaining. They're designed to uplift the consciousness. When you see the various songs that are entertaining in Hollywood and so forth, it has a whole different ilk because the entertainment is around sort of the rhythm, does it cause you to shake your booty? I mean, that's what, people want to be entertained because it has rhythm and, you want to bring your energy down, to the lower chakras. But in our science of yoga, what we want to do is transcend and lift the energy up to find the bliss. And that may not necessarily be so entertaining in the beginning. But once you absorb yourself in that bliss, you become one with that film and the director's intuitive voices guiding you through the process of acting your part out in this film, in this dream. And the joy that comes through the awakening process is what a master is trying to convey to us through this reading. The master is trying to convey to us through the books that he's written. But ultimately, we have to become the master ourselves. And once we become the master ourselves, we write our own script in bliss. We write our own script in joy, in freedom. Because none of the downward pulling energies that tend to block us, to keep us bound to the fear and the suffering of this world can hold us anymore. We're free. No more, Yogananda would say, sex, wine, and money. These are the three delusions of this world. And we can go into that subject on another time. But just think about how much we are bound by those three things. And that's why we wear yellow. That's why we wear white. That's why we wear blue as Anaya Swami or orange as the traditional Swami. I renounce that because I understand that brings nothing but suffering and pain and sorrow. But if you find yourself still caught up in it, play it out. Play it out and see where it takes you. But always keep a little part of your mind detached when you're playing out the drama of sex, wine, and money. And we're all involved in that activity in some level or another until we say no more, until we find our freedom. And true freedom lies in the bliss of knowing who you are, going beyond the ego gratification that we tend to involve ourselves in, into finding that freedom. And this is what I like about going up to Hollywood and playing my little roles that I do during the week. This is what I like because I'm playing out little dramas that I hope that I don't have to play out on the stage of life. Because I don't want that anymore. I want freedom. And I know that God will guide me to support me in my livelihood. And I know that God will guide me in finding a right partner to help me to ascend into the light, into the bliss. And I know that Spirit is manifesting everything for me right here and now. And as we open up to that, as we channel our ego with the intention of knowing who we are on the highest level, the little ego, which is centered here, becomes the bliss of the great myself. That great myself, the higher self, your soul self, will take you over this ocean of delusion on the raft of Master's boat of light. And as he said, I will come again and again into this world. 1,000, 1,000,000 times I will come, as long as there's one stray brother or sister who wants to know the truth. And that truth will set you free from the hypnosis that we've found ourselves in right now. This is the journey. Our goal is only one. Write your own script. Write it with God. And play your part in this world as a hero. And find your freedom beyond the confines of the little ego into the great myself. We call it Param Atman, the presence of the great myself. That's who and what we really are. So is ego our friend or our foe? Well, it depends on you. You write the script. You decide for yourself. When you meditate and practice Kriya Yoga every day, when you begin to see your little self dissolving and feeling that presence of the great myself, then you begin to see, I'm just an actor on this stage of life. And I'm going to be guided by the divine director, not by this idiot who's behind the booth looking at me on the screen. And every once in a while, you might have to throw a Japanese beetle in the mix, just to mix things up a little and break the hypnosis of the script. God bless you on your journey. May you write your scripts with joy and in bliss. A soldier from England remarked to a foe, the reason we win is we pray as we go. But we pray as well, then just look at our dead. Ah, but we pray in English, the Englishman said. I had a little box when my Lord made me, and in that little box I did put a tree, a pony, a teddy bear, a bright green sled, and everything around me that my eyes did see. But how can a box only hold a sled? A pony and a tree puzzles your poor head. It can't put in a little tiny baby's mind. The mighty world becomes a little box instead. Well, as I grew older, my box grew too. Held airplanes and ships and a birch canoe, school books and foreign trip and college proms, good times of friends aplenty, yes, and also you. Well, somehow in this box would only fit one school, one family, one country, and one social rule, and certainly one church for only my ways right. Anyone with other ways is just a fool. Well, Well, so I used to think, but now I must confess, at judging fools I wasn't any great success. Truth somehow lived without me, though I called it mine. What box could hold the world? It's just preposterous.